Are you guys still utilizing all things AI over in your group, in your department?
Yeah, we're using it more and more and
Yeah.
always brainstorming new ways to leverage it. And I subscribed to this email subscription through Futurepedia. Did I share that one with you already?
No.
So it's this website that, like, basically their value proposition is that they're staying on top of it so you don't have to.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And they send like a Reader's Digest every week of here's the top 5 tools that you should be aware of.
I subscribe to a few of those. I have a developer friend who does one, and so I've been following him for years. Yeah.
Nice. Well, the thing I like about Futurepedia is they're like, if you want to be the smartest one in your office, you can do so in 5 minutes a week by reading this email,
So
basically.
cool.
So they've designed it in a way where it's like, here's the tools you need to know right now, here's what they do, and here's how you can use them or incorporate them into your work.
Yeah. And I'm curious when you guys are researching, because your team, I think, has the most flexibility around creativity, right? I mean, clearly you guys just not just is it part of your like part of your tasks, of course, but like it's also expected that you guys are kind of always looking at new learning and learning and technology tools. So
Totally.
when you say that your team's like, looking at tools and stuff, hey Ethan,
Hey, Ethan.
is it work productivity stuff internally for your team? Is it on the learner side of things? I mean, I'm sure it runs the full gamut, but I mean from your perspective, like what are the things that you're kind of looking into?
Yeah, so like I've been testing out different productivity tools just to help me manage my time better, like with project management, or I've tried a couple of those calendar tools where you punch
Uh,
in what you need to do and it tells you how to optimize your week. The problem with those is almost all of them, it's like the pro version that actually does the fancy AI stuff, and
yeah,
when you're just using the basic, it doesn't really do anything helpful.
totally. Yeah, it's totally fair.
It's like for 7 days, you can see what it would be like. And then
Yeah,
after that, it's going to cost you $300.
yeah,
I'm like, yeah, no.
yeah. Oh, hey, Angela, hey, Ethan. Well, thanks, Callista. I was
Yeah.
just curious. Welcome back if you've been here before. This is a very much an open forum to ask questions, seek clarity. We are not the LAPU does not have all of the answers, but we're good at asking more questions, I guess. And George is not joining today, so and I don't have access to the attendance list, so it might be a smaller group. I'm not sure, which is totally fair. Um, but I do have some questions kind of primed to just get conversation started, unless Ethan or Angela or Callista, if you guys have any questions you'd like to throw out there, um, that always helps me out.
Nothing comes to mind. I always like hearing like use cases
Oh
and
yeah,
education use cases, just seeing what people are thinking about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
yeah. We've been using Notebook LM a lot more in my
Yeah.
team the last couple of months, but we've seen some really strong use cases around Notebook LM
Mhm.
just for operational purposes. Like creating for me, um, hey Yvonne, how you doing? Yeah, for me, I've actually trained Notebook LM with 8 years of notes that I've taken here at the university, right? So I've been here for
So you actually
12.
did it?
Yeah, oh, I've trained it. I
Oh,
use it.
nice.
I use it every single day to ask it all sorts of random things. Like even for this meeting, I was like, "Hey, can you remind me some of the major topics that we discussed over the last few sessions, and any questions that were left open-ended that I should come back and revisit, stuff
Mhm.
like that." Where I'm like, "Oh, I'm sure I could go through all my notes and try to find that, but um, being able to like interact with my thoughts and my notes is so valuable. And I'm
That
not
is
quite at the point
fascinating.
where I want to let others interact with my notes, but like we do keep some department meeting notes that have been going on for close to a decade now that we could create like a notebook LM with all of that historical knowledge and open it up to my department to say like, hey, when did we transition, over to Salesforce as a CRM? And sorry, y'all, I'm in the IT department, so I'm always thinking operations more than I am thinking the teaching and learning side. So as you can tell, that's where my use cases come into play. So that's been probably the most practical and like really high value tool for me over the past 30 days has been Notebook LM. So, hey Ann, how you doing?
That's such a
Good,
cool
thanks.
idea. I
Yeah,
should do that with our team notes too. We have a ton of notes just from our Monday meetings that go back years. That'd be
yeah.
a fun exercise.
Cool. If you haven't been here before, this is a very much an open space. Feel free to throw a question out there, and if you don't have questions, then I'll fill the space, and I'll just keep talking until somebody tells me to stop. So, um, yeah,
I have the
it's
same
just
problem.
yeah, yeah. I
Okay,
guess I mean,
I have the same problem too.
yeah, an easy place to start are, what are the emerging AI trends that you're excited about as of right now, right? Because as we know, even if we asked this question 30, 60 days ago, it's shifting so quickly. So I'm curious, and if you don't mind, if you do share, tell folks your role at your organization, just to give some context in terms of your perspective. But yeah, what are some of the emerging AI trends that you're most excited about as of today?
So one thing, oh shoot, someone's at the door. I'll just tell you real quick. I'm at UC Riverside Extension, and we want to
Okay.
turn on Conmigo on Canvas.
Nice.
And
Yeah.
I'm also familiar with Play Lab, and I'm thinking of rolling that out to instructors so that they can create chatbots for their to guide their students.
Cool.
So
That's great.
I was at a NECTIER meeting, and it seems as if NECTIER also offers the ability for teachers to have their students create chatbots with them. And so
Mm.
I was listening to how this faculty, she was having her graduate students create chatbots. And one particular graduate student started her class knowing almost nothing about AI. And then after she started creating chatbots in this person's class with NECTIER, now he has a job in AI. So he went from not knowing anything about AI to getting a job in AI because of taking an AI class creating chatbots with NECTIER. Whereas where we are at LAPU, we're just having students interact with chatbots as opposed to creating their own chatbots. So at LAPU, is there a class where students create their own chatbots?
I think so. Do you know?
So
Daniel for sure? Anybody?
I
been
don't know.
we've been playing with a lot of different applications for the Nectar bots or course assistants. And right now we don't have students creating their own from scratch, but we do have a lot of basically like interactive role play situations going on. So the one that I made was for a psychology class where they're practicing the techniques that they're learning. We had one, I think it was for a criminal justice course where they're kind of working their way through not a murder mystery, but it's like it's gamified, and it's really fun to play with. So we're being creative in the ways that we're having students use it. Where we every course has a course assistant that's trained on the course content, but now we're going to the next level and creating active learning exercises with them as well.
That's
Yeah,
cool.
I just wish that they would, for my class, I wish that they would have an exercise specifically to introduce Spark into the classroom, like,
Mhm.
there is an exercise specifically telling them, to go into the study room and learn about that. But there isn't yet an exercise to tell them specifically to go to Spark so maybe if
Yeah.
somebody could add some kind of to
That's a
the weekly
conversation we're
form or something.
having right now. Like we're
Mhm.
actually brainstorming ways, like the best way to get students in there and using it. Because we learned that from our first pilot of it that students were weary of it because it was AI. And so we really have to go above and beyond to give them permission to use it and like really push them towards it. And not only that, but show them how they can use it. And
I
so
think
we're
maybe if you
doing a
had an
lot.
assignment where you had them ask and have everybody ask the same questions,
Yeah,
such
yeah.
as what is your favorite kind of, how do you create an essay or something like that? Or what do you know about essay structure? Or I don't know, just 5 very easy questions, just so they would interact with it. And then everybody report back what that interaction was. I think something simple like that, just to get them to go there and learn that it's there, the way that you have for the study room. So I think that the week 2 space would be the perfect place for it. If you
Nice.
either added a practice forum or you tack it onto the week 2 forum, which is already about introducing them to the study room. Anyway, so since
We're definitely on the same page for sure. Like we're having all those same thoughts and conversations, and we're implementing currently. So I appreciate that you're
like
in
for
favor
English
of that.
101, like with English 101, you can have them ask very easy questions to spark. And then in English 105, where people are a little more advanced, you could have them ask, what's the difference between cognitive bias and media bias? In other words, you have them a higher level of questions, but still simple and basic for that class. And I think this would go for any class, not just English 101 and English 105, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it sounds like I think maybe there's been a little birdie in here that heard your thoughts, Yvonne, because sounds like we're actively working on that. And I know we're also not just looking at within the classroom, but we're also thinking about the new student orientation process as well. And then one of the thoughts or comments that I heard about new student orientation in AI is it's great that you're teaching all of your new students, but to your point, what about current students, right? Like, there should be a way to make sure that those tools are being taught in the actual classroom as well. So I think that's a great suggestion.
Come to think of it, now that I'm thinking of it, ISTU can have a spark little element as well, if that's what you're getting at. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's in discussions. I don't know how much we're allowed to share publicly because, there's always room for changing of minds, I guess, but that's really neat. I know, that brings up the whole idea of AI literacy, which is something that we're trying to be very intentional about, clearly, as Calista mentioned, both in the classroom, but again, I'm going to jump to the operations side. We're hosting an AI competition for the admissions team.
Oh, that's right.
So this is actually different than this is different than the AI case competition, which I'll share a little bit more about.
Oh,
But internally and within the organization, what we're doing is more of a grassroots movement hosted by the IT department. We're meeting with departments, and we're hosting, a competition. They can win like $150, right? And all they got to do is have the winning idea, and then the IT team will go and build it. And the deliverable is not necessarily, it doesn't matter what we go to build. That's not the exciting part. The exciting part is that we're getting our frontline employees actually critically thinking about how to incorporate AI into their jobs, right? And they're seeing it as a companion, not a threat or a replacement of themselves. And so that's been really exciting for me, is like just this idea of bringing up the level of competency and knowledge of frontline employees that have already graduated with their degrees, but they still need to learn how to use these tools and incorporate them into their processes and stuff. And so, but I wouldn't, George has asked me to make sure that I share. There is an LAPU AI case competition that we're hosting in partnership with Nectar. And so this is
that's the
open
one
to
I know
students.
about.
Yeah, and so if you want to share it, there's the link. Please share it. And just so I can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, we also have an AI conference coming up on April 30th. So, okay, I'll get off the soapbox.
Those two events actually go together. So the way we're setting it up is the student teams that are going to participate in the contest are going to be working on their deliverables while the conference is going on, and then they join us in the afternoon for the remainder of the conference. So they'll be happening simultaneously, but it's going to be really fun. I'm excited about it. It's evolving into something way bigger than what we had originally thought it would be. So that's always exciting.
Is this a virtual conference?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, of course, everything on the school is virtual. Yeah.
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 I know we had like an in-person lunch today.
We
That's
did.
whoa, it's like, oh, there's that's a big deal at LAPU because it's just so rare that we all come together and gather, other than maybe graduation,
Yeah, it's part of it. Oh, I think that's Craig.
Hi, Craig.
Hey, Craig.
Hey, everybody.
I just saw you at the office.
just made it back.
Mhm.
I'm curious, Ethan, how much when schools are engaging with your team on Nectar, how much training and knowledge do you guys have to provide the schools, right? So like,
Mm.
I'm sure they're coming to you and saying, "Hey, we've heard AI is great, we've seen it, right?" How much like training and development are you having to do on the vendor side of things in the education space?
Good question. Hey everyone, my name is Ethan. I'm the director of analytics at Nectar. We provide AI course assistance to higher education, including LAPU, who we love to work with, as well as a bunch of other schools. And I would know a few people who might be interested in talking to you if you're interested in Play Lab and Camingo. To your question, I mean, one thing we've learned, I think probably the most important thing we've learned in the past, I call it 8 months, has been the support and implementation of how you onboard the school, onboard the faculty, onboard the students is crucial. It is so important. And Chloe, who works with us, is like amazing at that. She's so good at like understanding what someone needs, where they are, and providing the appropriate level of support. And I mean, I've looked at, hundreds of courses in my role who has high usage, who has low usage. And we've thought about, is it, what makes a certain course have high or low usage across a certain campus or that campus? There are a few factors there. One's, the school policy. One is the instructor and how much the instructor is interested. There's definitely this component of like, how much did we bring on the students, kind of this introductory assignment we mentioned. So I think to your question, to kind of summarize my rumble here, is a lot of things happen, but it varies. Some schools and some departments are super engaged and done their own reading, and some are super just kind of need the guidance. And we'll happily supply both, but it's a large variable.
Interesting. And Craig, so you oversee multiple faculty members. So I'm assuming you've heard all of the opinions on AI, right? As from instructors and such. And to Ethan's point, it sounds like usage within the context of higher ed is definitely tied to the instructor, not just the institution as a whole. So even though Los Angeles Pacific University may be really excited about the opportunities on AI, I'm curious from your perspective, Craig, how much of that excitement is actually at the faculty level versus, at the head or the organization level?
So let me just start by saying, traditional Christian higher ed institutions have had a real knee-jerk reaction to AI. And the primary concern for a lot of faculty, so for me, I probably got 20 adjuncts who teach for me, but they're teaching for multiple institutions. And so when I'm asking them, they're saying, hey, some of these institutions we're working at with the AI stuff, they're just not sure how to respond. And so the challenge for us at LAPU is we don't want our students to be adversely impacted by some of these technological changes. I'll give you just a great example of that is Grammarly. When we encourage students to write essays and papers, we encourage them to use Grammarly. Now, Grammarly, there's a point there where you can click on it and say, make it sound more professional. So there's already AI integrated into that. So the student does what we ask them to do. They submit the paper, and then the instructor says, ooh, you've got 100%, So basically, we're no longer using AI detection software because it just created too much confusion. Essentially, we're partnering closely with our faculty. Our faculty are concerned, Daniel, in terms of your question, their concern is that students are copying and pasting and aren't engaging in the critical thinking. That's the big concern. And what we're trying to help faculty, I think Wayne Herman's been really good with this from day one, seeing generative AI as a tool that we need to be using as faculty and modeling that to our students. So I think we've done great with a lot of the different trainings, but the reality is for many of our faculty, it's a tough learning curve. It's things have changed. They have to question now when their students submit something, did the student really write this, or is this generative AI? And my discussions, is it AI going back and forth, or is this really critical thinking happening? And so I think it's been a challenge, Daniel, across the board in higher ed. I think at LAPU, we've done a better job that some other institutions have because we just continue to have dialogue with our faculty, and we've had a ton of different, professional development opportunities. But I think in general, yeah, faculty are concerned. They're concerned that they don't have the ability to really ensure that academic integrity is happening in the virtual classroom. And then they feel like, am I compromising my integrity by assigning a grade to this student when I'm not sure that they really did the work? So I think that's really been the challenge that I've been working with many of our adjuncts on. We've been encouraging them just to work with students and say, hey, let me have a conversation with you. Because that's the other thing. If we start off with plagiarism, we never hear back from that student. They say, I was accused of plagiarism, and so I went to another institution. So it's almost got to be, hey, let me connect with you and talk with you a little bit about your paper. And I do that really casually. And then I'll say, your paper's great. Take a look at this paragraph or two that are highlighted. That just means you didn't use enough of your own words. So staying away from any type of, pejorative, judgmental perspective is what I've been trying to encourage our faculty to do, and just to have conversations. I say to students, I really want to hear your active voice. I want to hear your experience. And so I think
Yes.
that's been the learning curve. I think we've been dealing with it at LAPU. We're smaller too, so we don't. Some of the larger institutions, it's hit them much faster, I think, than us because they've had so many students. So for us, we've been able to kind of slowly maneuver around it, partner with our faculty, and I think the biggest opportunity, though, Daniel, moving forward, is going to be providing our faculty with the training. Like Yvonne's got it. She's been doing all kinds of training on this topic, but majority of faculty have it, and many of them just this isn't something they're really interested in. It's kind of a new reality, and so some of them are, hesitant to really get involved in it. So I think it's for us when we do professional development, what we hear from our faculty is like if Yvonne presents something really practical or Brant presents on something really practical, our faculty really love that. And they say, we know these tools are out there. And we've got to we got to learn to use those. Help us with some practical ways to learn the tools versus just talking about the tools. So we spent a lot of time in the last 2 years talking high level. Now faculty are saying, okay, well, how do we really do that? And what does that look like?
Yeah. I love that. It's funny because I feel like, and I'm not on the teaching and learning side of things, but I feel as though the multiple choice questions in an online format used to be an easy way to cheat for people, right? You could just save those answers, publish them on Quora or wherever, and go look them up. And so most schools switched over to essay formats. It's harder to cheat in an essay format. And then here comes large language model. And you can just copy and paste stuff, right? And so it almost sounds like the structure in which we're asking questions and we're evaluating responses has to change rather than right in the same way that when a calculator became present we had to even in elementary school teachers had to change the way that they taught math and that they evaluated math, right? Because students had access to a new tool. And so I don't know the answers to that. Thankfully I'm in the IT department, not
No, but you're right, Daniel. And so for us with Calista and with our digital learning solutions team, part of it's rewriting the discussions. Are these the right discussion questions for students to be critically thinking? Or are these like the calculator where students can just find the answer really quickly? If students can find the answer really quickly and plug it in, that's not a good discussion question anymore. So that's part of our learning too, is to say, how do we frame the assignments a little bit differently so that we can see that critical thinking? And we want students to be using the tools. We just want them to be doing it ethically and responsibly. And it's hard for us to have a sense of whether or not that's happening.
Yeah.
We just finished revising a history course, and it was mostly because of this problem that we were seeing with students not writing in their own voice, and they were just Googling the answers and then putting it into Chat GPT to spit out a academic sounding response. And so we literally just said, what if we just chuck that expectation that your writing has to sound a certain way, and let's just evaluate you based on your actual thoughts. Like, it doesn't have to be an APA formatting, it doesn't have to sound super academic. We just want to know what you actually think.
Yeah.
And let's just have a real conversation here. Like, it doesn't have to be this academic banter back and forth, which, you know, you're not learning anything anyway if you're just copying and pasting it from a large language model. And of course, with historical content, it's easy to find the right answer. It already happened, you know? So it gave us the opportunity to try something different. And one of the things I found really interesting was my team was having this conversation of does our faculty actually embrace AI or not? And we had the very timely opportunity to add some questions to our faculty survey that we send out periodically. And we just tacked on a couple of questions about their sentiments towards AI. And I honestly was expecting to see very low reception to the tools or, skepticism in their answers. And overwhelmingly, their replies were positive and accepting and excited about the opportunities that the technology presents, which totally forced me to shift what I was believing about our faculty and staff.
Well, and I don't know, Callista. I think there could be somewhat of a false positive. Our faculty know how Wayne
Sorry.
Herman wants them to respond,
Yes,
you
yes.
know, and that we're on this AI bandwagon. So
Well, there was
my sense is,
honesty in the
yeah,
sense that they felt like they weren't implementing it to the fullest. They aren't yet fully
yeah.
trained in it, but they're open to it,
Hmm.
which I didn't believe that the majority were. And so that was interesting data for me to kind of wrap my brain around. It's like, oh, okay. So I don't have to fight so hard to convince you to try it. I just have to make it practical and
Yeah.
useful. So that's kind of the direction we're going in now.
And I think that's because our faculty know the ship has left the station.
Are you on the
It
boat
is
or
a new
not?
day. You got to get on the boat. So I think they get that, Callista, now. Two
But
years into it, I think they're there. And so now they're saying, give me some practical tools. Help me to learn this. But I don't think 2 years ago, it might have been very different than that, I think.
oh, 100%, 100%.
Yeah.
And
It's
I
different
was
with, oh, I'm
happy to
sorry.
see. I was
Yeah.
happy to see it has shifted.
It's different with adjunct faculty versus, full-time permanent faculty, right? And so LAPU has a more unique model compared to other institutions. And so we may have some unique challenges or opportunities because of that. Because we have a smaller group of full-time faculty that are, yeah. And so that's actually something really interesting.
Can I ask about the
Yeah.
history course?
Mhm.
On the, you mentioned in that history course you reworked that you kind of changed the expectation, the formal academic language. Like, what do you think? Have you tried that? How do students respond to that? As
So
a student, it feels like so much is changing, and they struggle to
yeah,
contextualize.
we're gonna run it for the first time next session. So we're definitely
I
gonna be
see.
watching the
Okay.
feedback on that course, and we're gonna be measuring the outcomes a lot more closely comparatively. So there's a lot of data points we're gonna be interested in gathering. But yeah,
It's on the,
See.
is this in the discussion post where we're kind of removing the guardrails a little bit?
specifically, yes, we did a lot of overhaul on the discussion expectations. But even with the assignments, the use of Nectar in the course is more active learning. We're giving them more opportunities for creativity.
Hmm.
So it's just a different perspective on something that, it's a general ed course, but the subject matter expert and our full-time faculty, Brant Himes, his major concern was just giving them the permission and opportunity to write in their own voice so that it's not just robots talking to each other in the course.
Well, that's really interesting. I've been
Yeah.
like searching for examples where we always tell like, assessment has to change.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how it should change. I agree with that statement on how it should change. And it's really encouraging to see that
Well, I
happen
like
in
the
the
idea.
wild.
I like the idea of assessing the input if you're in a controlled environment, right? So, like, I've always wondered, like, why aren't we capturing the inputs into Nectar and counting that as participation, right? Because the idea is that students are engaging with a concept, a material, or other people. But in this case, it's asynchronous and online, so interacting with other people's a little odd. We've figured it out, for the most part. And so what if we were to judge on what if you evaluate on the input rather than the output? And so, the students, they still have to deliver something on the output, but being able to see the raw input and how they got there
Yeah.
would be like the equivalent of the math teacher saying, "Hey, show me your work. I still
Yeah.
need you to get the
Literally.
right answer. Like, get that, right? Copy, paste, do it, not don't copy paste, but get the right answer. But show me the input on how you got there, right? And the grading process, the evaluation is less about the output and more about how they're learning, right? Or actually, I don't know how the evaluation goes because I'm not on the teaching learning side, but I do like this idea of kind of shifting the focus rather than being on the output, then, thinking more about what students are inputting into these systems. But
You mean product versus process?
yeah.
Yeah. Craig, do you remember, was it the motivation course where we asked them to submit their transcripts from Nectar?
I believe so. I know Shannon Hunt was working on that in one of the site courses that we're
Yeah, because
doing
we
as
were
well.
interested in seeing that, just like you said, Daniel, like have them show their work. It's one thing to practice the skill of motivational interviewing. It's another thing to show us exactly what took place in your conversation with the Nectar assistant.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question for my own interest? So we are under we're developing a lot of analytics around the dashboard, and more stuff is like in the works currently.
Uh-huh.
And we've had this internal discussion, some with external customers as well, of how much information do we show the instructor, do we show the course designer? Namely, do we show messages? Do we show a summary of the conversation? Do we show anything that can link the conversation back to the student, like privacy, PI kind of
Yeah,
stuff?
the
How are
FERPA.
y'all thinking about this?
I
Yeah.
mean,
So
yeah, go ahead.
I
there's
love
been a
this
lot
question. That is a great question.
there's been a lot of research on uh, K-12 teachers, and if they knew the student coming in was a C student and they saw the transcript, then that student is more likely to get a C in their course. So I would give that example as we just want to be careful on what faculty are looking at. We don't want faculty to see anything that might bias them towards that student and
Hmm.
may lead them to think, oh, this student's a C student or something like that. So we want to make sure we keep the transcripts and the GPA stuff out of there. I don't know how much faculty really need to see in terms of if the student had a conversation with the success coach, I'd want that to be anonymous. I'd want the student to be able to talk with that success coach about the challenges in their course. I wouldn't want the faculty to be able to see that transcription and say, oh, the student just complained to the success coach that, I haven't given them enough time on the assignment. So I think there's a piece of it there where students expect that they're getting some level of confidentiality with that success coach if they're talking about their course. And I don't know that the faculty member necessarily needs to see that. So for me, I think I've been trying to brainstorm and think, what do faculty need to see? What would help them? And the challenge with that, though, is anything that we show them could lead to potential bias. So that's the part where Wayne and I have just been real careful, kind of thinking through, okay, so what we're thinking now is more about just how many terms the student maybe has been in classes. Is this their first term or their third or fourth? So some really basic things, but not too much. And so we're still kind of grappling with what's the right information to provide faculty. And we want to make sure that whatever we're providing them certainly isn't going to have an adverse impact on students.
What about faculty seeing the transcripts between the student and the Nectar bot, though? Right? Not between two individuals, but the student interacting with the learning material within the course. Would that, do you see that as valuable? And I think that's what the direction you're going, Ethan, right? More on the actual transcript, the AI transcripts?
Yeah, correct. That's the kind of question we're discussing internally is how much of that information do we
Okay.
show?
I will
So
say,
that's showing the work again now, right?
yeah, yeah.
Go ahead, Calista.
I was just going to add, like, that was the conversation we had when we were designing with Shannon, was she just wanted them to be easily, she wanted it to be like click of a button. Here's my transcript, copy and paste, kind of how ChatGPT has that copy button at the bottom. And it doesn't have that right now. So it does force students to create their own copy of whatever they they did with the bot. And that's fine. They just have to put it in like a Google Doc. So however you wanted to address that on your user interface would be up to you. They're not prevented from doing it right now, but there are obviously easier ways to accomplish it.
There is a very ugly export button in the chat history. You can export a CSV file.
Yeah.
It comes down not very prettily formatted. That
Yes,
we're
we experienced that as well.
yes, it's not lovely. Okay, this is helpful context. Okay.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that, Craig, your immediate reaction was, hey, we got to be really careful about the conversations we're exposing to faculty. Um, so even though Ethan's questions around the AI transcripts, I think there is just a high level of sensitivity, and hence you're wrestling with the question, Ethan, internally to figure out, well, how much information is too much information to share? And I know we struggle with this in an information technology department with amongst our staff, right? These are not our constituents. These are staff that are choosing to be here and they're willfully employed. And we still struggle with, okay, well, how much of this information should we make available to their boss or to the HR department, right? And I know for us, where we've drawn the line is, and this is again more on the operation side, there needs to be a valid reason for somebody to peer into that information that is not information that we want readily available to their managers at this point, right? And so, like in the classroom setting, I could see a world where we now require you to put in your source, Nectar and the URL to your conversation, right? So that way it's there. I could see that as a value add for us, as saying like, oh, you can as a student you click this button and it already gets your URL and all of your stuff prepped. You just need to paste that into your sources, right? And that gives the instructor the opportunity to peer into that if they'd like. That's just a thought.
Yeah, and so from a bias perspective, I have no concerns about that, Daniel. That makes a lot of sense. It gives faculty what they need to see if students really did the work, right? So
Yeah.
I think as we look at Gen AI and the confusion that faculty have about students doing the work, this could actually help that to say, hey, you can take a look and see the student interactions and dive down a level deeper. So I think that would be a plus.
Yeah, bringing transparency to the whole usage of these generative AI tools is really going to be a big factor in the embracing of it on an academic level, because
Yeah.
you can use it as a research tool, and it doesn't have to be this taboo thing, especially as the language models are getting smarter and better.
Yeah.
Like it's almost a waste of time not to use them at this point.
Yeah.
And there's really no way to argue against that. It's just a fact.
I think from a privacy point of view, as long as it's related to just the assignment that you're doing, it's okay to have that, that information about that student. But if that student was having a confidential, chat with the bot, then in that case, then that's between him and the bot or her and the bot. But then the student also has to be aware that if you have a personal relationship or whatever, personal conversation with your bot, whatever the bot is, you have to make sure, especially if it's ChatGPT, who else has access to that information
Yes.
besides you and the bot, you see?
Yeah, that information is going somewhere.
Yeah, and then of course you get foreign chatbots into the picture, and then it gets even more convoluted. Like, where's that information going? So I think students need to be told that they have to be careful when they're using something outside of Spark of what personal information, confidential or otherwise, that they're giving the bot, especially
Yeah.
when other countries are now starting to make their own bots.
Well, it's a huge reason why I have not gone down the deep seek rabbit hole,
Oh,
because
how did you know it was that one? Yeah.
I just can't bring myself to install it on my personal devices, let alone my work devices. Like I
Please
can't
don't install that
I
on your work
can't do
device.
that. Like
I tried it. I tried it once, and that was it. Then I chickened out, saying, "No, I'm not trying it again." I
I'm
just
like,
did it
it's
once. It was so
probably
mediocre. It was so
yeah.
mediocre. The one time I tried it, and then that was it.
They did have that really nice feature where you could, I think it was like logical button or something on there, and then ChatGPT was like, "Oh, hey, we'll take that the next week,"
Yeah,
right?
great
So,
idea.
I do love the competition driving more value for us
Yes,
as consumers. I appreciate that.
yes.
Admittedly, I did install deep. I did go that route. I went and checked it all out. Partly, it's part of my job to make sure I understand this stuff.
Yeah.
And I have to understand the security risk. That's a big part of it. So,
It's a big
but
one.
I did it in a contained environment, so I felt safe.
Yeah.
But
I
I
know.
heard that if you do it in Poe AI, all of the data goes into an American server. If you try DeepSeek on Poe AI, I
Oh,
don't know
nice.
if I don't know if
It's
that makes any difference. That's still somebody else out there looking at your
Yeah.
stuff, you know?
it's an open weights model, so you can take it and host it wherever. So if PoAI or Google put this on GCP, for example, I'm sure Azure and
Yeah. Yep.
AWS as well. So in that it would not be leaving their walls in theory in that use case.
In
In
theory,
theory. Yeah.
theory. I keep thinking, how do you know there's not some malicious code in there that you don't know about, even if you do put it on your computer or someplace else? And since I don't know much about coding, it's very easy for me to be the fearmonger and stuff. How do you know? It's not like, yeah.
Yeah.
The
And
the less you know, the more you can be afraid of it.
mhm.
It's like it's a monster. It probably isn't, because whatever DeepSeek invents, then now suddenly everybody else has it the next day. Isn't that what you
Yeah.
just said? Because it's open source. And I remember Sam Altman making a joke saying, if the DeepSeek people want to, create new stuff, we welcome it because we want it on our stuff as well. I remember he was being something like that, like for
Yeah.
once. Yeah, it was very funny. And then another time when Sam Altman was, hey, they copied off of us. Everyone laughed, especially the authors who were saying, well, you copied off of us. This is
Copy off of
you're some kind of
everybody.
hypocrite,
You
that
trained your thing on everyone's content.
Yeah.
you already ate everyone else's content. What are you complaining about? That was funny too,
Yeah.
Yeah.
about Sam Altman, because and I think Sam Altman even drives, he was driving in our area. He was driving an ugly, one of those Teslas. Sorry, I went off topic, AI.
Not a cyber truck, right?
Oh,
You
those
don't-
are so ugly. Those are so ugly, I think. They think it looks futuristic, but I don't. I think it's ugly.
I've
Yeah.
seen
I
the
prefer the
trash
old
can that
time.
looks
I prefer the old time 1950s Chevrolet that's open and has those silver streaks on it. I like that. That's going off AI. So I'll
Yeah.
let Daniel give us the topic.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it though. We're just talking about potential bias, right? I mean, that's I think where the conversation went. Which yeah, it's interesting. It's a very challenging problem. And Craig, I love this is again just more broad than AI, but more on just the idea of potential bias. I mean, at a certain point, you got to present some information to instructors, right? They need to know the person's first name and last name, maybe.
Yep.
Or do they even need their last name? Is that going to introduce bias, right? My last name is Terrones. If somebody reads that, are they going to assume something about me? Versus a Wicker or a Brewer. And so there's always that question of bias, and I totally commend you for trying to continuously tackle that. It's a challenging
Yeah.
one.
We try, Daniel. And when we do program reviews, we'll look at different ethnic groups in the program and we'll compare their GPAs with other groups too, to
Mhm.
say, just to rule that out
Yeah.
as well. So as academics, that's where we're always at. It's always, hey, are we being fair and equitable to all students across the board? And how do we quantify that and demonstrate that we are in fact doing that? And so a lot of times, like I said, in program review, we'll take a look at that. But you raise a great point, Daniel. I mean, the reality is there's so many factors that can impact or bias somebody. And so we're continuing to grapple with, okay, well, how much is enough information versus too much? And where's that fine line?
Yeah.
That's great. I do have a question about sources, citing your sources and students, right? So right now, if you are in the classroom, do we require that of students to cite large language models? Is it different if it's ChatGPT or Gemini versus Nectar? If it's more, promoted by the university versus an external model?
We've asked students to cite, I think it was probably 6 months ago or a year ago or something, Wayne Herman sent out an email to students saying that if they're using generative AI, they need to give credit where credit's due and they need to cite their resources. So we've done that. But the other thing I'll add, Daniel, is we did move away from more of a traditional discussion where students are using APA and having APA formatted references. We've asked the faculty not to focus that on the discussion. The thinking is the discussion and an online class is like the discussion in a face-to-face class. And we want
Yeah.
it to be dynamic. And we want to take off those guardrails, Daniel, that you talked about that impact students' ability to really get started because they're so focused on, is my APA right? Is the formatting right? So we've really said, focus more on the formatting APA in the papers, not on the discussion, so that we can have more of a dynamic and engaging discussion in the class.
We still
Interesting.
want
So what?
them to refer to the things that they're pulling from if they are reading resources or articles. Like they're allowed to bring those into the discussion, but like he's saying, like you don't have to be so academic in the
Okay.
discussion forums.
Yeah, we're not going to mark them down if they didn't do a right APA reference. We're just saying, just give credit where credit's due.
Yeah.
If wherever you got it, you say it verbally, put it in the discussion, but we're not going to mark you down if you're trying to give credit and you didn't do it in the
Yeah.
APA format. So that we're trying to build that culture and encourage the faculty to think in that way. But it's hard for many of them because they're used to grading just on APA and format.
Mhm.
So for them, they show up and that's what they've always done. And they want to give students this critical APA feedback. And we're saying, hey, we're changing the model, the paradigm a little bit. And we want it to be more interactive and engaging and dynamic. So for some faculty, they're struggling with, okay, well, how do I connect with students? If APA is off the table, and that was the primary way that I used to connect with them, well, what do I do now?
Mhm.
A conversation.
I've only taught like 3 classes in my life here, and I've taught them here as an adjunct faculty. And I will say I was very challenged in my first class, giving somebody a better grade that I could tell was not engaging with the material critically, but they checked every single box on the rubric versus student B who was loving the material, like absolutely you could see they were tying it to their work, tying it to their future, and tying it to their home, and tying all of these technical concepts to real practical applications. And I was so excited for the student, and then I would have to like give them less than an ideal grade and then say, hey, like you're doing the right thing, but do these things so I can give you a better grade, right? You, but you're doing the right stuff. Like
that's how we coach our faculties, Daniel, do exactly what you're talking about, to focus on the positive. And the challenge, the rubric, the reason for the rubric is to provide more objectivity in grading.
Yeah.
But like you said, Daniel, with more objectivity also comes this challenge of, oh, they didn't necessarily hit all the points in that certain area. So we try to say, hey, you did great on this. These are, if you want to earn an exemplary score, here's some things you can do next week to improve your score.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm curious, what does AI citing AI or large language models look like in a paper? Not necessarily in the discussions, but somebody has to write a 6-page paper for English, right? What are our expectations around citation and using AI in a more formal paper like that?
APA has a site where they have an official response to that, and APA itself wrote, I guess if you go to www.apa.org, or if you type in AI, APA, and so on and so forth, there is an official article that APA came out with about how you officially would cite AI. That's where I got mine. That's where I got it from.
Yeah,
because
me too.
At first, when we first had the training sessions with faculty, everybody would guess what an APA reference citation would look like. And then it took a while for APA to actually come out with that official version. And before they did, everybody had a different version of their citation until finally APA came out with the official one. And that was it. But it
Interesting.
took
I'm
a
looking
while.
at it right now, and it looks not greatly, not the best execution of this, right? Because it's like the source, you're just saying OpenAI, right? And you're putting the link to the model, but not necessarily your conversation with the model. Like you're not linking back to the conversation. And so it's like, I don't know. Anyways, I'm sorry. It's just an observation, but it's very interesting that API wouldn't want that level of insight into a citation, but maybe that wasn't available at the time when they
it wasn't available at the time. Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
You need to email APA and add that and then they would be aware of it, because for them, APA, this is cutting edge. So you need to tell them, oh, and where do we put the links to the conversations? Now you can share, ChatGPT has a share thing in which everything has a unique link, just like Google or Canva or something. So you need to tell them that. So you're smarter than APA.
But it's pretty easy for the students. It's basically, if they're studying an APA, there's just parentheses, OpenAI, comma, in the year 2023, 2024. So to your point, Daniel, it doesn't give me much as the instructor. And then I don't know where ChatGPT pulled all that information from, right?
Yes.
Neither does a student. So
Mhm.
That's the challenge.
That's very interesting.
Also, I discourage students from having an APA, using AI to find their sources anyway, because AI hallucinates.
Yeah.
And there's this article about this, what do they call, bonehead lawyer who used AI. This is like the third time. There's 3 different lawyers in 3 different countries, all doing the same thing. I think it's a generational thing. I think that the younger generation who grew up using Google think, and Google will seem to be always right. So why not AI always right? I think it's a generational thing. Whereas the older generation is used to real research in the library. I'm talking about lawyers. Because my cousin is a lawyer, and he says that when you're a lawyer, the first couple of years at the law firm, you're just learning how to do the massive amounts of research to go through the law library and stuff. And it's really hard. He goes, that's like a rite of passage. And younger people, he fears that with AI, they're going to skip all of that rite of passage, and it's just going to be all ChatGPT. And because they're so used to Google always being right, that's why all of these bonehead lawyers, I believe that's the new trendy way that lawyers are calling idiots that use ChatGPT. One was quoted as saying, "But I thought ChatGPT was always the truth." He was saying that and then laughed out of every time a lawyer would talk about it, they would mention this guy's name as some kind of idiot or something like that. And so now a guy in Australia, same thing. So I post those kind of articles in my class to warn them that if you use AI as a source without fact checking it, you may become the bonehead lawyer that everybody laughs at.
Yeah.
That's great, Yvonne. Love it.
Even if you use Perplexity, and even if it gives you a link, that doesn't mean that it exists. You still have to check that link, because I remember I was playing around with Perplexity, and I clicked on one of the links, and it had a 404 error.
Yeah. Because it'll invent them if they don't exist, because it's trying to give you what you want.
It's just trying to please you,
Yeah.
because that's what it was programmed to do, right?
That's literally all it's trying to do. It's trying to get you what you want, even if it has to invent it.
How do they fix that?
Ethan?
So this is my opinion. I consider myself a pretty well versed person, like as of today. Hallucinations are a problem that will be solved. They're very quickly being solved.
Yeah.
There's this kind of joke, right, that language model is a stochastic parrot, meaning it will, it just like says things with some probability distribution, a stochastic distribution.
Yeah.
That's kind of true, but it's rapidly being solved. There's so much incentive with this conversation, all the other conversations to solve that problem. One thing we're seeing in the past, I'll say 6 months, is like the reasoning model paradigm. This is O1, this is O3, this is DeepSeek R1. Gemini Flash 2 of thinking is this as well. The kind of you can imagine it being a loop. That's not exactly how it works. You can imagine it being a language model answers a question before it gives you the answer. It like thinks about it and circles back on it. You can use that to get context. And in that process, we'll find that it will be like, oh, actually, that's not a true link. Let me do it instead. It'll do that, 5 times.
Nice.
And there's still problems here, of course. It's not perfect, but I predict that in 2 years, we will not be concerned about this. Right now, we kind of are still, unfortunately, but in 2 years, we won't be.
That's
a great way to explain that. I've heard that explanation is like if you were to ask ChatGPT, let's say a question a year ago, and it gave you the wrong answer, and then you told it, hey, you gave me the wrong answer, it would apologize and then give you a new answer. And what it's doing now, some of these newer models, it's apologizing, but it actually is going back and fact checking again and saying, oh, oops, we did get it wrong. And then it's kind of, I love the loop because that's, a very developer-esque, but it loops back through and just make sure that the second time it is getting it right. And so I know some of the models are doing that more aggressively than others. The Gemini model is very aggressive with, being more cautious as of right now. And so,
Well, to add on here is there's this notion of like a verifiable domain. Is the thing being discussed something you can prove? Math proofs, code. You can imagine a language model writing code, running the code in the background. It works or it doesn't work, and then like giving you the answer based off that. Can we stretch what it means to be verifiable? Can a URL link be verifiable? Can history be verifiable? who was president in 1834? I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
someone was, right? You can go prove that. And so how do we stretch this notion of like, what can we verify? What can a language model in real time verify? And what can you not verify? Where some things are contextual and aren't useful in that domain, but we're stretching that definition.
Great. Well, thank you all for such a healthy and fun conversation. I just wanted to just give a couple reminders that, if you know somebody at the college level that's taking classes, please encourage them. We'd love to get them involved in the AI case competition, which is directly tied to the free virtual conference that we're offering on April 30th. So hopefully we'll see all of you guys, gals and guys, next month as well. And so thank you all for joining in a very fruitful conversation. Stay warm, stay safe. Have a good day.
Thank you for hosting this, Daniel.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
All right. Adios.
Bye, everyone.